Hello, everyone. This is Jimmy Coulters back again with another logic video. And today we're covering the subject of block puzzles. And I'm going to go ahead and talk about, how you go about doing that. I've already created a prototype of this system, but we're going to start again so that you can kind of get some idea about how to construct it. I'm going to walk you through the steps. Let's put live clone on, although we won't need it if you're making this fresh. But all you gotta do is press stamp shape, sculpt mode, stamp shape, mirror, clipped mirror, and stamp out a little block. You can use grid snap if you want. And we just scoped him out, but here he is, a block. And then just press L1 and R2, copy that, make it white, and invisible. Now, we're going to try to group these two. It's going to be a little difficult because they're both inside each other. This is for good reason, though. Now that one's invisible, we can see the other and mess around with it. So if you just press preview invisibility, that'll allow you to make modifications. Now, we don't want this to be collidable, so that's good. However, we are going to want the invisible boy to be collidable. Another thing we're going to want is for them both to be movable, as seen in our other fellow over here. Actually, yes, just checking. Alright, now we're going to want a microchip. We're going to call it block, because it's a block we're working with, ladies and gentlemen. And now I'm going to talk about the basics of what we're going to be putting in here. First things first. A gyroscope. 100% overall dampening and 100% strength. Align on all axes. And it should be just fine the way it is. And what this will do is allow the block to be, in one particular orientation, no matter which way it's turned, or which way it moves, which is what you want for sure. Next, we're going to want a tag called block telly. And this is going to serve two purposes. One, it is going to act as a method of triggering the block's movement process, and two, it's going to act as a way to, put the player in a stationary position on one side of the block or the other. Now you'll see with our example over here that we have them aligned on all faces of the block. And I might go ahead and copy that just because, it's much quicker. And this is highly dependent on, oh, I guess it's not much quicker. Never mind. We're not going to copy it. We're going to do it slow, the old-fashioned way. We're going to go ahead and copy this out just so we can preview it. This is going to be our teleporter later, but I'll talk about that in due time. Basically, you're going to want a logic chip within the puppet, and the first thing you're going to want to stamp out is a teleporter labeled block telly. Set it to match target orientation. Make sure you do that. The position is up to you. I put mine in the midpoint of my puppet. If we put on preview invisibility, turn it off, and you'll see about where it's at. You could put it as feet if you wanted to. Oh, wait. I did put it as feet. For some reason, copying it sets it back to the default. Well, move it down to his feet. And this is going to act as the position of your teleporter. And I've already taken the liberty of programming animations into him, but I'm going to go ahead and copy this so that we can get a good position for our idol. This is going to be him in his neutral stance when getting ready to push the block, but not actually moving. That should do it. It's about dead center. Now we're just going to copy it. And we're going to turn it around like so with the grid snap. All you got to do is press L1 and square to open up this menu. If you want to mess around with the orientation of his tag. Now we're going to move it back over here, like so. We're also going to maybe change this around, because this should be at the bottom, and that one should be at the top. It'll make it easier for you to remember. We're going to turn this one off so we can preview the other one. The alignment of this actually is pretty important if you want things to look good, so keep that in mind. And now we'll go to the other one. This is going to be a little bit more difficult because we're going to have to get it in the center of the other side, since we don't really have the luxury of just being able to swap faces, at least not with this part. But precise move should do the trick. It's about centered, I think. And we're going to go ahead and turn this off so that we can preview the next one. And now that we have it in position, we can easily alter the Z-axis. Put it over here. And that's pretty much it for that one. And then we're going to take a chip and put it in the center, like so. This chip we're going to label movement. I'm going to put little arrows on it to help. And we're just going to connect all of their power to, all of their tag output, I should say, to the power node in this chip. Now we're going to open it up and take a look at phase 2. We're going to need a controller sensor. I think the orientation might be important, but it might not. We'll see. Main thing is just stamp it out, get rid of all these connecting wires because you're not going to need them. And we're going to set it to remote control. I'll take a look at the orientation. So Z is facing upward, and it is in the center, so we might want to do that if we can. Just go ahead and grab the center piece, move it down like so. Again, I don't really know if this matters, but just in case, we're going to be careful. And just use L1 and square if you want to open this up and see the guideline of such and such. And we're going to have a new chip, which is called movement again, but this is just for ease of use in case we want to copy anything. And inside this chip, we're going to have a series of little doodads. I'll get started on the zones, I think, is a good place. Maybe not, actually. Let's get started on movement. First thing you're going to need is a mover. A regular mover, not an advanced mover. Let's see if the orientation is right. It is. We're going to make it 2. Set to full strength. However, dampening is going to be 50%. And we're going to have local space on as well, because the orientation won't change, and having it on local will be just fine. That's pretty much all we're going to need to do. Next, we're going to need a chip called, well, right and left will do. Right. And left. And we're going to go ahead and open it up and see what's inside. What we've got is a node. Simple node. And to that node, we are going to connect the left stick output. Not left stick local, just plain left stick. Keep that in mind. Next, we are going to put this splitter right here. And put another splitter there, and connect them like so. Then we're going to take 2 nodes, one here, and one here. Actually, we may want to reverse these cords. And we're going to take a combiner. And again, we're going to cross the cords. We're also going to have a zone set to detect a tag called moving block. And we're going to have it set to a square around the block. And all this is going to do is give you a, an output when you're moving the block, allowing the player to, interact, so to speak. Moving block. Make sure it's all capitalized and spaced properly, otherwise it won't interact with the tag properly. And we're going to make it a square, of course, and put it in the center just to be, safe about it. And that should do nicely for that. Now all we have to do is take the output from our little combiner here and connect it to forward speed. Okay. Next up is up and down, which we'll just copy because it essentially has to be exactly the same. Although I will check to make sure there's no differences. And the same wire will be applied here as well. Something you should keep in mind, and I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate it just because I would like you to know what we're doing concerning this. When the power's on, this output is more visible. Before it just looked like a couple of pluses and minuses. This is the X output. This is the Y output. And we're going to be deleting this wire and putting the Y output for up and down. And you can actually see it working right there in real time. The values and such. And we're going to copy our mover, and I believe we're going to want it pointing this away. And we're going to take a look at that. Yes, that's the proper orientation. So, a mover pointing that way. Same speed as before. And we're just going to go ahead and take the splitter output and connect it into the forward speed. There we go. Now there's some other things we're going to have to do, because it's not that simple, of course. We've got these little doodads. And what do these do, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. Basically, what they do is they shut off the ability to move in a certain direction. So, as an example, if you're pushing to the right, and then you hit a wall to the right, it will stop it from pushing to the right. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we do this. I've got a little node here. Not a node, I should say, a zone set to label, and it only detects scenery, so that would be things labeled scenery. And I've taken the liberty of labeling all the surrounding walls and floor scenery. Although it won't detect the floor, but we're going to go ahead and demonstrate how it works, or at least show you how to align it. Set to label, invisible and non-visible, in case you want to have invisible walls. I don't know if I would advise that for a block puzzle. Invisible walls can be pretty annoying in that situation, but just in case, you know, there's a way to do everything if you do it right. Well, almost everything. Gonna move it down to about here, although we'll check the orientation. Yeah, that's about right. You want it to be low enough that it might collide with small barriers, like, you know, like that, but you don't want it so low that it touches the floor. Pull it in a bit. I don't know exactly how close it should be. Okay, it should actually be about there. That'll do. Now we'll copy another one out. And this one will be on the left side of the cube. And I think we're just going to go around and add them to all faces of the cube. I guess you could align this to make it simpler on your, you know, on your brain. You could align this in an actual, you know, up and down format. Previously I didn't, but it might help to make it clearer. And again, if you want to alter the position, it's as easy as opening this up with square and L1 and just moving this little white dot around. And you can easily resize the dimensions by just holding R2 and pulling, so keep that in mind. Alright, so first things first, when we push up, that's interesting. Okay, that's right and left. So when we push right, and if you have this set to remote controllable, it'll be easy to preview this. So when you're pushing right, that goes off. So we're going to want this off. And we're going to want to connect that to that. Make sure it's looped, of course. And make sure it's set to keyframe mode when you're using this action recorder. Keyframe mode. And when we're pushing left, we're going to want this one off. You could even label them if you wanted to, or make them look different, you know. It's another way you could do it. I'm just going to test it this way because it's quicker. Okay, looped. Now let's go ahead and check our up and down format. So when pushing down, we're going to want this off. You can even call these down. Right. And even add stop at the end if you want to. Just to keep track of things, you know. I don't think it's highly necessary, but I just thought I'd mention it for organization purposes. I'm a little messy myself. I try not to be for the sake of our audience, but it is a natural inclination. Good organization, though, is downstream from good logic, so I'd say it's a bad habit to be messy. The more you know how things work and the more they're properly aligned, the better. It'll make it easier to keep track of them, easily modify them. So do not be messy, I would say. Alright. We've got that. And we could even put it inside a chip if we wanted to. I don't even know if we have to, but there it is. So that's the block movement all taken care of. I'm going to double check, though, just to make sure everything is in tip-top shape. It appears to be. So now all we got to do is figure out how to make our player do what he has to do. We need to have him have animations. And if we want to save him as a separate asset, or the block, we're going to have to make it so he can interact with it without being connected to it directly with wires. So, what we've got here is the button we're going to use to push, or at least initiate a push, is R1. And we're going to push it with a stick. And of course, put out a block teller like we did earlier. I mean, you already had it out if you were paying attention. But you want it set to match target orientation. You want it right here about between his feet. Another thing you want to help with collision is I've made this sculpt around him. It's not visible, but it is collidable. And it doesn't collide with friend, and it's labeled friend. However, it collides with everything else. Another thing I ought to mention is that our little block here is labeled as an object. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. Should make collision easier. And next thing we're going to want is a small zone set to detect tag. And it detects a tag called block teller, which you may recognize as the thing that I mentioned earlier. This teleporter adheres to it, but it's also going to act as our ability to push the block when we press R1. R1 is directly hooked up to the power of this zone, as it were. And this is the zone shape that I went with, so that it's fairly lenient, but at the same time it can't interact with the other side of the block and, you know, mess up your orientation. It also can't interact with this side of the block. Anyway, let's take a look at the rest. We also have our idle pose, which I showed you earlier. It's just a simple keyframe. It's set to slow power 2% and slow power down 2%, or 0.2. That'd be like 2 milliseconds, I believe, or something like that. But yeah, it's connected to a node. It also connects to the teleporter. So the teleporter goes on once this is on and detecting a tag, but only if it detects a tag. Next, we have the action recorder. And what it does is turn off our puppet interface, which I put inside of a chip. And the puppet interface is basically what controls your ability to move, period, you know, in any direction. I put it inside here. I also took a switch, connected it to a node, and took 2 lines from that node and connected them to our procedural animation and procedural walk. So when this is off, he will have no procedural animations, which is good because we have our own custom animations that we want to kick in. So that's that. Also make sure to set this to loop and make sure you're in keyframe mode when you record the power being turned off, which is as simple as L1 plus square, press X on the power, it's off. So just keep that in mind. And over here we have our little tag called moving block. It's at our feet, but it could be at our chest or anywhere, really. Just so long as it's in front of the player and close to where we want it to be, which we want it to be able to interact with this fellow right here that I established earlier. Oh, by the way, set this to tag. You will want it set to tag, so that it can interact with this gizmo. And what does it do? All it does is turn on this node, or I should say this chip, called animations. We seem to have left out the N there, so it's just animatos, which is funny, but also stupid. Now the power is off, which all you gotta do is press this to turn it off and on. But I've had it set to default, as off, and this keyframe turns it on. And it's got the 0.5 slow power up and 0.5 slow power down. And we just connect the output of this tag to that, and it'll turn this on. Also inside here we have the left stick local connected to a node. This node leads to a splitter, and this may be very familiar because it's rather similar to the logic we had in the block. I'm going to turn this on real quick. You won't need this switch. I'm just showing you what's going on. Okay. Here's the Y output connected to another splitter. You're only going to need Y because the way I've rigged this up, you're only going to be going forward and backward anyway, so you won't need X. However, if you want to connect X and have it so you can drag the block this way or that, even though you're here, like, I want to pull it that way, or I want to pull it this way, even though I'm on this side of the block, you could do that. It would just be a simple matter of arranging a new splitter that connects to X. However, I'm doing it the old-fashioned way, where you can only go backward or forward, so hope that helps. We also have a camera pointer, which we have aligned to face forward from the player, and we've modified it to point somewhat down so that you get a good idea where you're moving the block. This is pretty vital if you want orientation to work properly, so I highly advise having the camera pointer or something to orient the camera. The zoom multiplier hasn't been messed with, so that should be good. If you want to open up and mess with it, it's L1 and square. It's as easy as that. And now let's talk about our splitter that comes from the up-down output. And I've made a little animation using the keyframe mode on the action recorder. There it is, and it's set to loop. It's a very simple animation. I've also done one for pushing forwards. And I'd say a good example, if you want to know how to make these animations look, is use Legend of Zelda as a basis. Block puzzles are fairly common, and the animations they came up with, even though most of the games are quite old by now, are pretty good. So any 3D Zelda game is probably a good, basis. There's probably lots of other games as well. I'm not as familiar with, what's it called? Legacy of Kain. But apparently they have block puzzles in that, so I've also labeled the animations handily so that you know which is which, and connected the positive output to back and the negative output to forward. So, let's see how it all comes together. If I'm correct, I should be able to push the block. And remember, it's L1 to do so. Oh, another thing you want to do, get rid of your temporary switch. Oh, and this. There is this little action recorder. And what does this action recorder do precisely? You may be wondering. Well, with the invisible connectors, we can see what it does. It just turns off the idle. Because you'll want the idle off when you're pushing, because otherwise it'll interrupt with these animations. So, yeah. Now let's go ahead and push. L1 to grab the block. Doesn't seem to be working for some reason. Just got to check this out. Have we got L1 or R1? It's R1. R1 to push the block. Maybe pull it further down, that might help. Make sure it's set to detect tag. Oh, and we're going to want to power these all on again. I turned off the power. That's probably not a good idea. Alright, they're all powered on. Now press R1, and we're moving forward, we're moving back. He will do this weird thing when he stops briefly that's a little odd. I suppose to make it more snappy, you could maybe turn this down a bit. Maybe turn it down to 1%. Or 0.1, I should say. Yeah, that makes it a bit more snappy. Actually, honestly, maybe just turn it to 0%. It might look just fine. Let's try it out. 0%. It does mean that you'll, approach the block very fast, but at least it'll look a little more normal. Anyway, we're pushing it backwards, forwards, and we can go to the other side, push it backwards and forwards. We're going to have to realign this part, though. It appears that I might have had my wires crossed in the wrong direction. I think this does matter. Which way the controller sensor is pointing actually does affect it. I'm going to go ahead and double check just to see. Okay, let's take a look. So X is facing that way. And it's aligned the same. I don't know exactly what's causing it to be reversed in the up-down movement, but it's very easy to correct. It might be the fact that I copied this top one. Right and left is very different. You're going to want the wires to be more like this. Not crossed, as it were. And that'll fix the problem nice and easy. Forward, backward, and we're going to go ahead and push it up against a wall to demonstrate how it can't, go any further. Keep pushing, but the block won't move. Nice and steady, stops at the wall. Now there is a little bit of a problem here. We're able to move it right and left, as demonstrated earlier. You don't really want that. But I think that's because somehow we're interacting with the other. Put this on wireless and we'll take a look at what we're doing here, because it technically shouldn't be possible. Is it possible on the old block? Let me try that out. It's not possible on the old block, so we're doing something correct with the old block. And I want to get it right, because I wouldn't want you to make the same mistake. Just not sure what it was that caused that. Hold on a sec. I think I know what it is. It's probably these tags. Oh, this is what it is. I forgot to add these little zones. How silly. Yes. But if you want to move the block left and right, just leave these zones out and it'll allow you to do that. But Yeah, these zones are how you actually are supposed to limit your right and left movement. Basically, they only power on if the player is touching them. We kind of confine them mostly to the center of the block. Move them down a bit too, that way you can only interact with them if you're on the floor level. And they're set to detect player only. Make sure to put them on label. So that's going to power our right and left. And now we'll put this one below here and power our up and down. And let's move all these down because they're a little close. Alright. We're also going to want to turn this around. There we go. That should work and do the trick. Oh, and another thing you're going to want to do is set it to possessable again. Might as well turn off this block. We won't be needing it. And now push, pull, push, pull, no right or left. Now there is this weird thing where when you press right or left, you'll kind of get this like idle stance, and there's like a little bit of movement. It's kind of frustrating. I don't like it, but I don't think it's really that bad. I think the main thing is that the controller has difficulty with things that are, what do you call it, nuanced. It like only can do inputs that are on or off. So it has trouble with things that are like diagonal or at weird angles. So that's why you're getting this kind of oddball cutting out thing that it does. I'm technically pushing right now. One way to fix this would be have it hooked up to the D-pad, and all you'd have to do to fix that problem is connect the D-pad, buttons to the various inputs that you want. And also make sure that the player, when they're pushing the block, uses D-pad inputs or something of that nature. At least to do the pushing part, In here, you would want the D-pad. I might as well show that. Let's go ahead and show that, just to show how it's better than using the controller. Okay. So, down should be connected to back, and up. Where's up? There's up. Should be connected to forward. Let's pull these away. And all we gotta do in here well, actually, you could still have this connected. The only difference is we're going to connect these directly. Okay, so that's right and left. And they may need realigning, we'll see. Yeah, they're going to need realigning for up and down, mainly. Or I should say right and left. The wires are crossed because we're thinking of a controller, so just switch those wires back. Might do the same here, to be honest. Alright. Now, this will get rid of that weird wonkiness where when you go left or right. So just have it connected to the D-pad, and I don't think it's too big of a sacrifice for this goodness of not having the glitchy right or left glitch thing happen. But if you want to use the stick, be my guest, it just probably won't work as well. And real quick, one little bit of information is you're probably wondering, Jimmy, what if I want to set off a switch by having the block, you know, hit a certain area? How do I do that? Well, I'm going to talk about that real quick because I feel like that's a major aspect of a block puzzle, and luckily it's very simple. Just put out a little chip, take out a zone, or actually you don't even need a zone. Well, actually you could have a zone. And just have it set to detect a label. In this case we could have it set to detect scenery. And as soon as it comes within the zone, it'll do just fine. You know, once you push it on top of that, it'll activate. I'll give you an example. Let's go ahead and push it onto the switch. Oh, wait. We've got to make the switch not labeled what it is labeled. Oh, we forgot to turn this off. Turn off unlabeled. Alright. Now push it on, and you'll notice that it's active. But you're like, Jimmy, you're probably wondering, what if I want to save on zones? I've got too many zones in my scene. Is there a way to do this without a zone? There is. The tag. And call it press. And you're probably like, I don't get it. How does this work? Well, actually, some of you probably know where this is going, because you've seen me talk about this over and over many times before. But basically, all you'll need is a little trigger zone, constantly active, set to tag, called press. And set it to cube. Set it kind of vaguely in the center. That way you want your button, you know, it to be mostly on the button when it presses it. And move it a little bit this way. Okay. So this should do it. Cheaper way to do it. Now, it will cost one zone, but in comparison to having multiple buttons with multiple zones, this is a lot cheaper. So, that's literally everything, I have to say. Oh, I guess there is one little thing I should talk about, one little kind of annoying aspect, I should say. When you're doing this with the arrows, it kind of reverses the polarity, so that's a little bit annoying. That's a little glitchy. Another thing is when you pull it over to a wall, you'll kind of go through the wall, which is bogus and weird. But I think that probably the best way to do that would be to just have it so that either you have a zone that's active when you're pushing it that limits, you know, similar to what we did before with the zones that limit where you can push it to. There's one that limits how far you can push it back, and it's like active when the player is grabbing, but no other time. Anyway, hopefully you found that illuminating. Thanks for watching. If you have any thoughts, leave a comment, and if you enjoyed the video, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. That's all for now. Goodbye.